95% of people will live their entire lives without ever discovering what they were truly capable of. Not because they lacked the talent, not because opportunity never knocked, but because somewhere along the way, an invisible ceiling formed in their mind, one so quiet, so familiar, that they mistook it for the natural limit of who they are. This is not a story about intelligence. It is not a story about luck. It is a story about psychology, about the subtle, often unconscious patterns that keep the majority of human beings tethered to a life of good enough, while a small minority breaks free into something extraordinary. To understand why most people stay average, we must first redefine what average actually means. Average is not the absence of potential. It is a stable equilibrium, a resting state the mind settles into because it feels secure. Psychologically speaking, the brain is not designed to seek greatness. It is designed to seek certainty, and certainty, more often than not, looks exactly like the life a person is already living. This is the first hidden mechanism, homeostasis. Just as the body regulates temperature to maintain balance, the mind regulates ambition to maintain psychological equilibrium. Any significant deviation from the familiar, a bold career move, a new discipline, an unfamiliar level of discipline, triggers internal resistance. Not because the goal is unreasonable, but because the nervous system interprets change as risk. And risk, to a brain wired for survival, feels indistinguishable from danger. This is why comfort becomes so seductive. Over time, familiarity gets quietly rebranded as safety, and safety gets rebranded as success. A person can spend years inside a routine that neither challenges nor fulfills them, yet feel a strange reluctance to leave it, because the brain has learned to associate the known with the safe, regardless of whether it is actually serving them. But there is a second, deeper layer beneath comfort: identity. Most people do not fail to grow because they lack the tools. They fail to grow because they have already accepted a self-image, and every decision they make, consciously or not, is calibrated to remain consistent with that image. I'm just not disciplined enough. I'm not the kind of person who takes risks. These are not simply thoughts. They are psychological contracts, silently renewed every day, dictating the ceiling of what a person allows themselves to become. And identity does not form in isolation. It is shaped, often unknowingly, by environment. Early feedback from parents, teachers, and peers plants the first seeds of self-belief or self-doubt. Social conditioning then reinforces those seeds, rewarding conformity and quietly punishing deviation. To stand out is to risk judgment. To play small is to remain accepted. For most people, the fear of visibility becomes stronger than the desire for growth, and so they choose invisibility, mistaking it for peace. This is how the invisible ceiling is built, not with a single decision, but with thousands of small, unconscious agreements to stay the same. Comfort reinforces identity. Identity reinforces conditioning. Conditioning reinforces comfort. The cycle closes in on itself. An average becomes not a failure, but a default. Yet here lies the most important truth of this entire analysis. If the ceiling is psychological, it is not permanent. It was constructed, and what has been constructed can be dismantled. This raises the question that separates the majority from the exceptional minority. If staying average is simply the mind's default setting, what exactly do the remaining 5% do differently? What allows them to override homeostasis, rewrite identity, and resist the pull of conditioning that holds everyone else in place? If the ceiling most people live under is built from comfort, identity, and conditioning, then the 5% who rise above it are not built from different material. They are built from different decisions, small, repeated, deliberate choices that quietly rewire the same psychological machinery everyone else is governed by. The first distinction is not talent. It is their relationship with discomfort, where the average mind interprets discomfort as a warning sign, a signal to retreat, The exceptional mind interprets it as information. Discomfort to them is not danger. It is direction. It tells them exactly where growth is waiting. Over time, through repeated exposure, their nervous system undergoes what psychologists call habituation. The same challenges that once triggered anxiety begin to trigger readiness instead. They have not eliminated fear. They have simply changed what fear means to them. The second distinction is more radical. Identity is not something they protect. It is something they revise. Most people act from the identity of who they have always been, defending it like a fixed possession. The 5% operate in reverse. They ask a different question entirely. Not, is this who I am? But, is this who I am choosing to become? Every action, no matter how small, becomes a vote for a future identity rather than a confirmation of a past one. This single shift from self-defense to self-authorship is perhaps the most understated psychological advantage a person can develop. The third distinction lies in their relationship with time. Average behavior is often dictated by the nearest, loudest reward, the dopamine of ease, distraction, and immediate relief. The exceptional mind operates on a longer horizon. It is willing to accept short-term discomfort, short-term invisibility, even short-term failure in exchange for long-term compounding. This is not superhuman willpower. It is a recalibrated definition of what counts as a win, measured in years, not minutes. The fourth distinction is architectural, where most people rely on motivation, a resource that is inherently unstable. The 5% rely on environment. They do not wait to feel inspired. They design surroundings, routines, and relationships that make the desired behavior the path of least resistance. Discipline, for them, is not a daily battle of willpower. It is a system engineered so that the right choice becomes almost automatic. The final distinction concerns failure itself. Average psychology treats failure as a verdict, proof of inadequacy, evidence to be avoided at all costs. Exceptional psychology treats failure as data, a single neutral data point to be analyzed and adjusted, entirely separate from personal worth. This decoupling of identity from outcome is what allows them to fail repeatedly without collapsing, to be rejected without retreating, to be wrong without being broken. None of these 5 distinctions require extraordinary genetics or rare circumstance. They require awareness and then repetition. The gap between the average and the exceptional is not a canyon. It is a narrow margin of daily decisions, compounded relentlessly over time, until one day the distance looks unbridgeable from the outside, even though it was built one small choice at a time. This is the final truth worth carrying forward. Staying average is not a life sentence. It is simply the mind's default configuration, the setting it falls into when no one deliberately chooses otherwise. The ceiling was never physical. It was psychological. And anything psychological can be identified, questioned, and rebuilt. So before this ends, one question is worth sitting with honestly and without flinching. Is the life you are currently living the one you have deliberately designed, or is it simply the one you never decided to change?